adenosine diphosphate and thromboxane A2 are responsible for the platelet aggregation as well as activation, and they causes the further platelet aggregation and leads to the formation of temporary platelet plug. Why I am saying temporary? Because at this stage, if you press the blood vessel, this platelet plug will be ruptured out and bleeding can occur. So we need the permanent solution of this problem, and that is why this platelet aggregation step is further followed by the deposition of the fibrin. This fibrin is formed by the combination of extrinsic and the intrinsic pathway or by the use of various clotting factors. So whenever this fibrin forms, this deposit over the platelet plug and it provides strength to the platelet plug. And hence now even if we press the blood vessel, there will be no oozing of the blood from the blood vessel. And meanwhile, this injury or this gap in the blood vessel is healed by its own. After healing of this, the problem is we do not want this blood clot to remain at the site of the injury. Why? Because it can cause various thrombosis, thrombotic event, as well as can lead to the embolization, which can be life-threatening. So what body do? Body secrete the plasmin. This plasmin has a capability to dissolve this blood clot and produce the clot degradation product. So that's all about the hemostasis, which you have already covered during your physiology class. Please don't write your roll numbers. Now, before going to the other factors, we will discuss what is the difference between the arterial and the venous thrombosis. So this difference helps us to understand that which type of drug we should use in which type of diseases. For example, in case of venous thrombosis, it is red in color, and it is red in color because of just a minute. Because of the clot, because this clot is made up of clotting factors and RBCs, and this RBC gives them the red color. Since it is made up of clotting factors, so we use the treatment of venous thrombosis anticoagulant drug. So whenever the disease is developed due to the venous thrombosis, like in case of DVT, etc., the treatment of the choice of the particular disease is the anticoagulant drug. In contrast to the venous thrombosis, in arterial thrombosis is white in color and it is made up of platelets and usually atheroma at its core. Since arterial disease like coronary artery disease हो गई या आपका cerebral blood vessel arterial में अगर आपका thrombus है, then it would lead to the stroke and MI. And by this knowledge we can know that the arterial thrombosis is made up of platelet. So we prefer antiplatelet drug in case of arterial thrombosis. So if somebody asks you what is the treatment of what would you like to give in case of MI, then the answer would be antiplatelet. Or if someone asks would you like to give what would you like to give treatment in case of deep vein thrombosis or any type of venous thrombosis, then the answer would be anticoagulant. This is the diagram, although opposite representation, venous is on the right side and arterial is on the left side. So if you see in the arterial thrombosis, there are many platelets and there is very little amount of the fibrin which is formed as a result of extrinsic and the intrinsic pathway. Then if you see the venous thrombosis, it is made up of RBC, very less amount of the platelet as compared to the arterial thrombosis, and large amount of the fibrin product. Since again I am repeating the same thing, since venous thrombosis is mainly made up of fibrin or which is made up of with the help of various clotting factors, so we particularly use anticoagulant drug in case of venous thrombosis. On the other hand, since arterial thrombosis is rich in platelets, so we use the antiplatelet drug in case of arterial thrombosis. Please don't write your roll number. If you have any question, then write it down. Otherwise, it will break the link of the lecture. So what happened? So this is clear now that platelets are the main constituent of the thrombi. I have already told you, whenever there is a damage in the blood vessel, the platelets are the following. After the damage to the blood vessel, there is a vascular spasm, and this vascular spasm is followed by the aggregation of the platelets at the site of injury. This aggregation of the platelet leads to the release of various substance. The important one are the adenosine diphosphate or ADP and thromboxane A2. What these two do, these two causes the exposure of the GP second B and the third A receptor on the platelet. Normally what happens, this GP second B and the third A receptor is present inside the platelet. But when ADP and thromboxane A2 act on the platelet, this receptor exposes it out and comes to the surface of the platelet and make the surface more sticky. Since the surface is now more sticky, it will attach to the various platelet in a large amount, and that leads to the platelet aggregation. So this is the whole formation of the platelet aggregation. On the other hand, we have already read that prostaglandin I2 or the prostacyclin, which is synthesized from the vascular endothelium, is a potent inhibitor of the platelet aggregation. So thromboxane A2 and ADP are the factors which promote the platelet aggregation, and as well as GP second B and third A receptor agonist. These three are promote the platelet aggregation, but prostacyclin, which is synthesized in the vascular endothelium, inhibit the platelet aggregation. So this is the diagram showing the same thing. I told you that thromboxane A2 promote the platelet aggregation through the thromboxane A2 receptor. I also told you that ADP, then I also told you that ADP also causes platelet aggregation. The receptor of ADP on platelet is P2Y12. Other than this GP second B third A receptor, which also can be write out as alpha second B beta 3 integrin receptor, also causes the aggregation of the platelet. So if we use the thromboxane A2 receptor antagonist, or if we inhibit the synthesis of the thromboxane A2, or if we use the P2Y12 receptor antagonist or GP second B or third A receptor antagonist, we can inhibit the platelet aggregation. So to inhibit this, we have the thromboxane A2 synthesis. When I covered my previous lecture, I told you aspirin, by inhibiting the cyclooxygenase enzyme, inhibit the production of thromboxane A2 in the platelet. So aspirin is the drug which can act as an antiplatelet agent. Then other than this, we also have ADP receptor blocker, that is P2Y12 receptor blocker. Among this, we have clopidogrel, we have ticlodipine, we have prasugrel, and many other drugs which we will discuss in a short while. Then the third factor which promote the aggregation of the platelet is GP second B third A receptor, which makes the platelet more sticky and further increase the aggregation of the platelet. Among the GP second B third A receptor blocker, we have efiximab and eftifavirenz. Other than this, platelet activation is also promoted by the thrombin, which act through the protease activated receptor 1. And this thrombin act through this protease activated receptor 1 and activate the platelet and further increase the aggregation. So recently we also developed the thrombin PAR1 receptor antagonist, and these are atopaxar and the vorapaxar. All of these agents we will discuss in the coming slides. So is there any problem till now, or should I continue? Is there any problem till now? Thank you, Adiba. Now coming to the very first agent which act by inhibiting the thromboxane A2 synthesis. In the last lecture, I have told you aspirin is the drug which is a non-selective COX inhibitor. It inhibits both COX-1 and the COX-2. But the characteristic feature of the aspirin is that it irreversibly binds with the COX enzyme, whereas other NSAIDs bind reversibly with the COX enzyme, and that is why aspirin acts as an antiplatelet agent, while other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs cannot act as an antiplatelet agent. Then COX pathway you already know, the membrane phospholipid से phospholipase A2 act करके arachidonic acid बनाता है, and this arachidonic acid then cyclooxygenase pathway के through thromboxane A2 and prostaglandin बनाता है. So aspirin by inhibiting the cyclooxygenase enzyme inhibit the production of the thromboxane A2, and since thromboxane A2 is required for the aggregation of the platelet, and we by using the aspirin we inhibit its production. So we block the platelet aggregation. At the low dose, it inhibits the COX-1 only, and at the higher dose, it inhibits COX-2. So this thing I also discussed you in the previous lecture, that in the low dose, aspirin acts as antiplatelet agent, but in the higher dose, since it inhibits both thromboxane A2 as well as prostaglandin I2, so at the higher dose, the antiplatelet action of aspirin is lost, while at the low dose, aspirin show the anti-platelet action. Now the other question is, when I was discussing aspirin with you people, I told you at the low dose it show the anti-platelet action, at slightly higher dose it show the analgesic action. Now the question is, why aspirin does not show the analgesic action at low dose? The answer is, the low for analgesic action, the inhibition of the COX-2 is also required, which is not occur at the low dose, and that is why aspirin at low dose only acts as an antiplatelet agent. But when we increase the dose, it inhibits both COX-1 as well as COX-2, and that is why it shows the analgesic action or the inflammatory action, but no antiplatelet action, because at the higher dose it inhibits also prostaglandin I2 as well. Now coming to the ADP receptor blocker, ADP is the agent which promotes the platelet aggregation by acting through its receptor P2Y12. So if we give the P2Y12 receptor antagonist, we can block the action of the adenosine diphosphate or ADP, and thereby we prevent the action of the thereby we prevent the aggregation of the platelets. So among the P2Y12 receptor antagonists, we have ticlodipine, we have clopidogrel, we have prasugrel, we have ticagrelor and canagrelor. Ticlodipine was the oldest agent, then clopidogrel came into the picture, then prasugrel, ticagrelor, and the canagrelor is the latest one. Both ticlodipine and the clopidogrel are the prodrug, and they require CP2C19 for their activation. This interaction is very important because you see that in the ICU, most of the patient is on the omeprazole, irrespective of their any disease. And in the ICU, most of the patient also suffering with the myocardial infarction, stroke, or many other diseases. So in these patients, if you give clopidogrel plus omeprazole, then what will happen? In the upcoming lecture of GIT, you will learn to know that omeprazole causes the inhibition of the CP2C19 enzyme. If we give clopidogrel or ticlodipine along with the omeprazole inhibit the enzyme, and thereby there is no activation of the clopidogrel or ticlodipine, and as a result of which patient can die, because these drug will not produce their action, because वो activate ही नहीं हुई तो action कहाँ से produce करेंगे. These two are the irreversible inhibitor of P2Y12, and they show the synergistic combination with the aspirin. Usually in the ICU or any other setting, we combine aspirin with the clopidogrel or ticlodipine to reduce the dose of aspirin as well. Then prasugrel, it is also the irreversible inhibitor of P2Y12. The difference between the prasugrel and clopidogrel is that prasugrel is faster acting as compared to the clopidogrel, but it has a high risk of cerebral bleeding, and that's why it is contraindicated in the stroke. Then ticlodipine, clopidogrel, prasugrel, all three are the irreversible inhibitor of P2Y12, whereas ticagrelor and canagrelor are the reversible inhibitor of P2Y12 receptor. Indication, if you see closely, these are antiplatelet drugs. So we will give the site where there is thrombus formation in the arteries and where there is significant formation of thrombus in the arteries, either in case of stroke or in case of MI. So that's the only indication of these drugs, like secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease and acute coronary syndrome in procedure of percutaneous coronary intervention or prevention of stent thrombosis. So whenever you want to reduce the action of the platelet, you will give the antiplatelet agent. Then the final is the glycoprotein second B and the third A inhibitor. I told you that these are the receptors which are usually present inside the surface of the platelet. When ADP or thromboxane A2 act on the platelet, these receptors get exposed out. And these receptors make the platelet surface very sticky, as a result of which further platelet aggregation take place. So if you see closely, you can understand that this is the ultimate, they are responsible for the ultimate step of the platelet aggregation. So that is why these agents are the powerful antiplatelet drug. क्योंकि अगर थ्रोम्बोक्सिन A2 को भी ब्लॉक करेंगे तो मे बी ADP के थ्रू एग्रीगेशन हो जाए प्लेटलेट का, ADP को ब्लॉक करेंगे तो मे बी थ्रोम्बोक्सिन A2 के थ्रू प्लेटलेट एग्रीगेशन हो जाए. बट अगर हम GP सेकेंड बी और थर्ड A को ब्लॉक कर देंगे तो थ्रोम्बोक्सिन A2 और ADP जो थोड़ा बहुत एग्रीगेशन करेंगे भी, वो भी फाइनली GP सेकेंड बी थर्ड A को क्योंकि हमने ब्लॉक कर दिया, वो फर्दर एग्रीगेशन नहीं कर पाएंगे. एंड दैट इज व्हाई दीज एजेंट्स आर द पावरफुल एंटीप्लेटलेट एजेंट्स. So we develop the antibody against these GP second B third A receptor, and among this we have F60mab. It is a non-competitive, irreversible inhibitor of intact GP second B third A receptor. And we also have tirofiban and aptifabetide. These are competitive and reversible antagonists that act specifically on the alpha second B subunit of GP second B third A receptor. So thromboxane A2 inhibitor, we have aspirin, ADP P2Y12 receptor inhibitor, we have clopidogrel, we have ticlodipine, we have prasugrel, we have ticagrelor, we have cangrelor. Then finally GP second B third A inhibitor, we have F60mab, we have tirofiban, we have aptifabetide. Then F60mab is the monoclonal humanized mouse monoclonal antibody, whereas aptifabetide is a heptapeptide and tirofiban is a non-peptide small molecule. If we talk about the specificity, aptifabetide and tirofiban only binds to the GP second B third A receptor, while F60mab also binds to the vitronectin receptor and inhibit the action of the vitronectin. Now what vitronectin do? Vitronectin basically it's a substance which promote the plasminogen activation. Okay? Then plasma T-half, the F60mab plasma T-half is short, whereas aptifabetide and tirofiban are the long acting. And since all of these causing anti-platelet action, so the risk of bleeding in all can be there. And this I have already told you, these are the strongest antiplatelet drugs as they block aggregation induced by all agonists. Then thrombin receptor, these are the comparatively new one. And I told you that this thrombin acts through the protease activated receptor or the PAR1 receptor, and when thrombin binds to the PAR1 receptor, which is found on the platelet, it causes the activation of the platelet, and this activation leads to the further platelet aggregation. So we have developed Vorapaxar and Atopaxis, which competitively antagonize the protease activated receptor 1 or the thrombin receptor 1 on the surface of the platelet. So Atopaxar is not approved till now. Vorapaxar was approved in 2014, and they also, similar to other antiplatelet agent, they are useful in reduction of thrombotic cardiovascular event and stroke in patient with history of MI or with peripheral arterial disease. So simple है, antiplatelet drug आप वहाँ use करोगे जहाँ पे डिजीज जो है जो आर्टीरियल थ्रोम्बोसिस की वजह से हो रही है, और आर्टीरियल थ्रोम्बोसिस की वजह से कौन कौन सी डिजीज होती है, मेनली एमआई हो गया, स्ट्रोक हो गया, एंड पेरिफेरल आर्टीरियल डिजीज लाइक गैंग्रीन एटसेट्रा. Then we have phosphodiesterase inhibitor. We have diapiridamole and cilostazol, and these are the two drugs which inhibit the enzyme phosphodiesterase. And this phosphodiesterase enzyme is responsible for the degradation of the cyclic AMP. So if we inhibit this enzyme, the cyclic AMP will not be degraded, and increased cyclic AMP block the platelet response to ATP and prevent platelet activation. Other than this, dipyridamole also block the thromboxane synthase. This is important because sometimes the MCQ comes in the form of aspirin inhibits thromboxane A2 thromboxane synthase. तो जैसी thromboxane दिखता है हम thromboxane synthase पे टिक कर देते हैं. No, aspirin inhibit thromboxane A2 and dipyridamole inhibit thromboxane synthase. And other than this, dipyridamole also increase the plasma adenosine level and potentiate the nitric oxide signaling through cyclic GMP, which inhibits platelet aggregation. So before going to the other topic, if you have any problem, you can ask. And just giving you the revision part, whenever there is a injury, blood vessel injury, there is a very first step to against that injury is the vascular spasm, and this vascular spasm is followed by the platelet aggregation. This platelet aggregation leads to the secretion of various products, including ATP and the thromboxane A2. These two products make the platelet further more sticky by exposing the GP secondary and third A receptor. Initially, this platelet plug is temporary, but later on, fibrin deposit over it and make the platelet plug permanent. But meanwhile, the blood vessel also healed up. So now we don't need this thrombus. So now the body fibrinolytic system comes into the picture, and through the plasmin, this fibrin containing clot has been degraded out, and fibrin degraded product would be excreted out. So how can we prevent the thrombosis in the arteries? In the arteries, the thrombus is mainly made up of platelet, and these platelet aggregation are carried out by the ATP, by the thromboxane, by the GP secondary third A receptor. And other than this, cyclic AMP, thrombin also plays the role in platelet activation. So thromboxane A2 synthesis inhibitor is the aspirin. ATP produce their action through P2Y12 receptor. We have clopidogrel, ticlodipine, prasugrel, etc., which blocks the P2Y12 receptor. Then we have GP second B third A receptor blocker like abciximab, tirofiban, aptifebatide. Then we have thrombin receptor blocker. Thrombin produce their action by protease activating receptor 1. And so we develop the drug which binds with the protease activating receptor, that is PAR1, and prevent the binding of the thrombin to PAR1. And among these we have Vorapaxar or Atoxpaxar. Other than this, we can produce antiplatelet action by phosphodiesterase inhibition. Yes, slide is not moving. I know. I am just giving you the revision of antiplatelet agents. Then I will come to the anticoagulants. So phosphodiesterase inhibitor, we had dipyridamole and cilostazol, and thromboxane synthase inhibitor is dipyridamole. This is all about the antiplatelet agent. If you have any problem in it, then please tell me. Otherwise, I am continuing with the anticoagulant agent. If you have any problem, then you can write it down, और नहीं problem है तो ये भी लिख दो कि मैम continue, please. So I will come to the another topic of anticoagulants. Okay, Vivek, I will try to go slow, but मुझे लग रहा है कि लेक्चर में पूरा ना पढ़ा पाऊँ, but okay, I will try to go slow. Okay, so Vivek, do you want कि मैं कुछ repeat करूँ तो I am ready to repeat it out. Okay, Vivek. Okay, but I am going slow now. So now the another topic is of anticoagulants. So what is coagulation? It is basically the transformation of a liquid or solution into a soft or the semi-solid or the solid mass. तो coagulation सबको ही पता है कि अगर ब्लड को अगर एक ब्लड का एक हिंदी में बोलते हैं थक्का सा जम जाए, मतलब वो सॉलिड सा बन जाए, तो उसको coagulation या thrombogenesis कहते हैं. So normally what happen in our body, there is a balance between the coagulation system and the anticoagulation system. So whenever this balance is shifted towards the coagulation system, we or the patient experience the episodes of stroke, myocardial infarction, and pulmonary embolism. And when this balance is shifted towards the anticoagulation system, the patient experiences the hemorrhagic stroke and internal bleeding. What we want that this balance should not be disturbed and there should be a balance between the coagulation system and the anticoagulation system. So before going to the anticoagulant, in a very brief, I will talk about the coagulant. So main coagulant in the body is vitamin K. It is of three types: K1, K2, K3. K1 is phytonadione, K2 is menaquinone, and K3 is menadione. जो coagulant वाला part है, it is not important for the मतलब professional के लिए important नहीं है, but it is important for the PGMCQ part. So अब next question is, which clotting factor require the vitamin K? Vitamin K is required for the activation of the various clotting factors, and these clotting factors are 2, 7, 9, 10. Other than these clotting factors, two anti-clotting proteins are also play a role, also require vitamin K, and these are protein C and protein S. ये याद रखना है कि विटामिन के क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर के साथ साथ एंटी क्लॉटिंग प्रोटीन में भी पार्ट प्ले करता है, क्योंकि when I will discuss the warfarin with you people, I will tell you the importance of this thing कि विटामिन के also inhibit the and required for the activation of the anti clotting protein. So where the vitamin K is required, vitamin K carries out the actually जो clotting factor जो liver से बनते हैं, they are formed in an inactivated form. So vitamin K is required for conversion of the inactivated clotting factor to the activated clotting factor. That's written here. Vitamin K carries out the final step in activation of these factors, that is gamma carboxylation of the glutamate residue. So जो clotting factor में glutamate residue है, उसका carboxylation के लिए vitamin K is required. Main indication of vitamin K, prolonged antimicrobial therapy. You all know that the intestinal bacteria produces the vitamin K. If we take the prolonged antimicrobial therapy or if we taking the broad spectrum antibiotic, then it will kill the bacteria of the intestine which generate the vitamin K. So in that case, we have to give in the vitamin K from outside. Other than this, dietary deficiency of the vitamin K, newborn, because their intestine is sterile, so they are deficient of the vitamin K, so they can require vitamin K. Overdose of oral anticoagulant like warfarin. Warfarin is the anticoagulant which acts by inhibiting the vitamin K, and that's why if we give the overdose of the warfarin, we can give vitamin K in the treatment of the overdose of the warfarin. For most of the indication, we use the vitamin K1, that is phytonadione. And this menadione, that is K3, is contraindicated in patients with G6PD deficiency because there is a risk of the hemolysis. It is also contraindicated in case of newborn because there are chances of the kernicterus. Why kernicterus? Because you all know that in the newborn, their blood-brain barrier is not well developed, and on the other hand, this vitamin K causes the inhibition of glucuronidation of the bilirubin and also displace the bilirubin from the plasma protein binding site. As a result of which, free bilirubin reaches to the brain and causes the connectance. So that's all about the coagulants. And now we start with the anticoagulants. So among the anticoagulants, we have the 4 group. The very first one, नीचे से शुरू करेंगे. Vitamin K antagonist, which act by inhibiting the vitamin K activation. These include warfarin, dicumarol, acinocoumarin. We have factor 10 inhibitor. Among this, we have rivaroxaban, apixaban, adoxaban. These are also known as new oral anticoagulant agent. Sometimes the short questions comes as a write a short note on new oral anticoagulants. They will not write you rivaroxaban, apixaban, etc. They will just write a short note on new oral anticoagulants. Then we have direct thrombin inhibitor. We have dabigatran, zimelagatrin, hirudin, lepuridine, bivalirudin, argatroban. And we also have indirect thrombin inhibitor. Among this, we have 3 categories. Unfractioned heparin, which consists of pentasaccharide unit along with the long molecular chain. Then we have low molecular weight heparin. This consists of pentasaccharide chain, but the attached molecular chain is far short as compared to the unfractioned heparin. Then we have fondaparinux and idraparinux. These are the agents which only have the pentasaccharide chain and no attached molecular chain in it. Okay? अब ठीक है स्पीड, अब तो तेज की भाग रही है. एक्चुअली मुझे पहले लग रहा था कि मेरा लेक्चर नहीं हो पाएगा पूरा, बट अब मेरे को लग रहा है मैं कर लूंगी. So vitamin K antagonists, these include warfarin, dicumarol, acinocoumarin and phenandiol. So out of all these, only warfarin is important. The important point of this phenandiol is it causes orange colored urine as well as liver and kidney damage. This orange colored urine is important because one another anti-tubercular drug, rifampicin, which you will cover in your antimicrobial lecture, it also causes orange color urine. And how does these act? These drugs act by inhibiting activation of the vitamin K dependent clotting factor, that is 2, 7, 9, 10, along with the anti-clotting factor protein C and protein S. Now coming to the history of warfarin. So we will start with the vitamin K antagonist warfarin. So in the late 19th century, it was noticed that the cattle who ate the spoiled sweet flour developed the disease, hemorrhagic disease. Those cattle developed the hemorrhagic disease. Later on, authors or the researchers working on it and found that this sweet flour consists of oxidized coumarin derivative dicumarol. And this dicumarol is responsible for this hemorrhagic disease in the cattle. Later on, in 1945, Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation patented the product dicumarol and gave it the name warfarin. So warfarin में जो WARF है वो stand करता है Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. ठीक है? Now, how does the warfarin act? So warfarin inhibits the synthesis of vitamin K dependent clotting factor, that is 2, 7, 9, 10, and 2 anti-clotting factor, protein C and protein S. So we all know from the liver, there is a production of non-functional clotting factor or non-functional prozymosin. Now this non-functional prozymosin converted into the activated or the functional zymogen or the functional clotting factor. How they converted? By carboxylation of the glutamate residue. Now this carboxylation required vitamin K. So this required vitamin K, and in this reaction, this reduced vitamin K is converted into the oxidized vitamin K, that is epoxide. अब नाउ बॉडी एक बार तो ये रिएक्शन हो गई, बट बॉडी नीड्स रिड्यूस विटामिन के अगेन एंड अगेन. सो हाउ डज इट प्रोड्यूस? नाउ अगेन ऑक्सीडाइज्ड विटामिन के इज कन्वर्टेड इनटू द रिड्यूस्ड विटामिन के by the enzyme vitamin K epoxide reductase. What warfarin do? Warfarin inhibit this vitamin K epoxide reductase product, as a result of which no formation of the reduced vitamin K. If no reduced vitamin K, no further activation of the clotting factor occur. Is it clear? The importance of warfarin is that it inhibits the activation of the clotting factor, but it does not inhibit those clotting factors which is already active. For example, मैंने वॉरफेरिन ली. अब मैंने वॉरफेरिन ली तो मेरे अंदर जो ऑलरेडी क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर है कुछ तो एक्टिवेटेड है, अभी तो बॉडी का मैकेनिज्म चल ही रहा है एक्टिवेशन के लिए. तो वो जब तक वो क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर खत्म नहीं हो जाएंगे जो ऑलरेडी एक्टिवेटेड है मेरी बॉडी के अंदर, तब तक वॉरफेरिन का असर नहीं आए. तो इट मीन्स, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि वॉरफेरिन का असर इमीडिएटली नहीं आता है, कुछ टाइम बाद आता है. जब कितने टाइम बाद आता है? उतने टाइम बाद आता है जितने टाइम में बॉडी में सारे एक्टिवेटेड जो क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर है दैट विल फिनिश इट आउट. So their antithrombotic effect comes nearly after 4 to 5 days, and that is why warfarin should not be given as an emergency anticoagulant of choice. Acutely नहीं आ रहा ना इफेक्ट, इसलिए acutely emergency condition में से as an anticoagulant ये नहीं यूज होता है. It is mainly used for the maintenance purpose. So it is the most widely used anticoagulant worldwide. It is found in two isomer, S isomer and the R isomer. S isomer is more potent as compared to the R isomer. Warfarin is given by the oral route. It acts by inhibiting vitamin K. This we have already discussed. Then it is not used for acute thrombosis. I already told you, because it do not act on already activated clotting factor. It is mainly used for the maintenance. Then in vivo anticoagulant और in vitro anticoagulant. देखो in vivo anticoagulant कौन से होते हैं? In vivo anticoagulants are those anticoagulants which act as an anticoagulant agent inside our body. मतलब हमारी बॉडी में थ्रोम्बोसिस चल रहा है, हम उसको प्रिवेंट करना चाहते हैं, तो हमने पेशेंट को वॉरफेरिन दी और वॉरफेरिन ने विद टाइम उसकी बॉडी में थ्रोम्बोसिस फॉर्मेशन को कंट्रोल कर दिया. इन विट्रो एंटीकोगुलेंट से क्या मतलब है? इन विट्रो एंटीकोगुलेंट आउटसाइड द बॉडी. सपोजिटली हमने किसी पेशेंट का ब्लड निकाला, टेस्ट ट्यूब में लिया, और अब हम उसमें सीबीसी या कोई दूसरा टेस्ट करना चाहते हैं. वी डोंट वांट कि जो ब्लड है वो coagulate करे. So we add some anticoagulant in it. Now the question is, can we use warfarin as an in vitro anticoagulant? The answer is no. Why no? Because जो हमने ब्लड निकाला है पेशेंट की बॉडी से, it consists of already activated clotting factor. And we know that warfarin does not act on already activated clotting factor. So that is why warfarin not act as an in vitro anticoagulant, but yes, it is a very good in vivo anticoagulant. Then can we give warfarin in pregnancy? The answer is big no, because it is a teratogenic agent and the syndrome which is caused by the warfarin is known as contra T syndrome or fetal warfarin syndrome. So how does the warfarin causes fetal warfarin syndrome? We know that warfarin causes the inhibition of the vitamin K. So warfarin and this activated vitamin K is required for the production of osteocalcin, and osteocalcin is required for the growth of the skeleton. So since we give the warfarin, it inhibits the activation of the vitamin K, hence it inhibits the osteocalcin, hence it affects the skeletal growth of the fetus, and as a result of which the fetus present with microcephaly, nasal hypoplasia and widely apart eyes. ये जो क्लिनिकल फीचर है ना इसके फीटल वार्फेरिन सिंड्रोम के, ये भी एमसीक्यू में क्वेश्चन आता है और नाम तो आता ही है कि फीटल वार्फेरिन सिंड्रोम या कॉन्ट्राक्टाइल सिंड्रोम, ये भी एमसीक्यू पीजी एमसीक्यू क्वेश्चन है. Then coming to the kinetics of the warfarin, it is taken orally. It is very well absorbed from the GIT. In fact, 90% bioavailability is 90%. It is highly plasma protein bound. It is important because if we given it with another drug which also has high plasma protein binding, so that drug can displace the warfarin from the plasma protein and can lead to the toxicity. Kinetics changes from first order to zero order, means initially it follows the first order, constant fraction of the drug is eliminated out, but if we increase the dose, then it kinetics change and constant amount of drug is started to eliminate it out, and as a result of which toxicity of warfarin can happen. Then we know that it inhibits the activation of the clotting factor, so thereby it can cause bleeding. The hemorrhagic complication rate is 1 to 10%. And if patient develop bleeding due to overdose of warfarin, fresh frozen plasma is the treatment of choice. Why fresh frozen plasma? Because fresh frozen plasma consists of the activated clotting factor. But the specific antidote is vitamin K only, because warfarin acts by inhibiting the vitamin K. Then warfarin can cause skin necrosis और पर्पल टोज सिंड्रोम. व्हाट इज दिस? व्हेन आई टोल्ड यू कि जो विटामिन के होता है वो क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर को भी इनहिबिट करता है और एंटी क्लॉटिंग को भी करता है. तो अगर इसमें आप सबकी हाफ लाइफ में देखो तो सबसे कम हाफ लाइफ किसकी है? नियरली इसकी है, प्रोटीन सी, 9 आवर्स. ठीक है, तो ये थोड़ा गलत लिखा है 4 to 6 आवर, इसकी भी ज्यादा होती है. तो द फर्स्ट फैक्टर व्हिच हैज बोन as a result of warfarin therapy is protein C. And protein C क्या है? एंटीकोगुलेंट है. तो यानी एंटीकोगुलेंट पहले जाएगा बट कोगुलेटिंग फैक्टर बचे रह जाएंगे. अब क्योंकि कोगुलेटिंग फैक्टर बचे रह जाते हैं तो कोगुलेशन स्टार्ट हो जाता है, जिसके कारण जो आर्टरीज में जो ब्लड है वो बहुत ज्यादा मतलब विस्कस हो जाता है, एंड जिसके कारण गैंग्रीन और स्किन नेक्रोसिस का मतलब जो डेंजर है दैट कैन इंक्रीज. So that is why warfarin is associated with can lead to the warfarin induced skin necrosis. So what happens? जो विटामिन के होता है वो क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर को भी इनहिबिट करता है, एंटी क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर को भी इनहिबिट करता है. तो जब हम warfarin देते हैं तो विटामिन के इनहिबिट होता है, तो सबसे पहला जो क्लॉटिंग और एंटी क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर में से जाता है सब्सटेंस वो होता है प्रोटीन सी. सिंस प्रोटीन सी सबसे पहले चला गया और बट ये क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर तो बचे रहेगा, तो ये क्लॉटिंग फैक्टर क्या करेंगे? ये क्लॉटिंग करेंगे. अभी क्लॉटिंग करेंगे तो क्या होगा? जो आर्टरीज में ब्लड है वो क्लॉट हो जाएगा. जब आर्टरीज में ब्लड क्लॉट हो जाएगा तो क्या होगा? ब्लड सप्लाई कॉम्प्रोमाइज होगी, और जब ब्लड सप्लाई कॉम्प्रोमाइज होगी तो क्या होगा? स्किन नेक्रोसिस होगा, व्हिच कैन आल्सो बी मैनिफेस्टेड एज पर्पल टोज सिंड्रोम. मतलब नेक्रोसिस, गैंग्रीन सा और ब्लड सप्लाई कॉम्प्रोमाइज तो पर्पल सा कलर हो जाता है. तो वी कैन आल्सो यूज द टर्म पर्पल टोज सिंड्रोम फॉर warfarin toxicity. And monitoring of warfarin is done by the prothrombin time. It mainly affects the factor 7, which is the part of extrinsic pathway, and the norm. And we know for if you want to monitor the extrinsic pathway, we consider the prothrombin time. So that's why when we want to monitor the warfarin, we will take the baseline value of the prothrombin time, which is in most of the case 12 to 16 seconds, and जो appropriate warfarin therapy increase this prothrombin time 2 to 3 times. So we can compare and like we can see the effect of the warfarin. Other than this, the warfarin monitoring can also be done by the international normalized ratio, and this ratio be calculated by the formula prothrombin time of the patient divided by prothrombin time of the normal and raised to the power ISI. ISI is the International Sensitivity Index that depends on sensitivity of the reference thromboplastin to WHO standard thromboplastin. ये सारी स्टैंडर्ड वैल्यू है जो भी हर लैब की अलग अलग होती है, अपनी लैब के हिसाब से वो वैल्यूज पे पुट करते हैं एंड देन वी कैलकुलेट द prothrombin टाइम ऑफ द रेशियो, सॉरी INR, इंटरनेशनल नॉर्मलाइज्ड रेशियो। अगर ये इंटरनेशनल नॉर्मलाइज्ड रेशियो विल कम लेस देन 5, then discontinue the warfarin therapy temporarily and restart it at the low dose. If it is ranges between 5 to 9, then vitamin K1 should be given 1 milligram orally. If it is more than 9, but there is no evidence of the bleeding, then vitamin K1 again, vitamin K1 was phytonadione in the dose of 2 to 3 milligram. In case of INR more than 20 or bleeding, fresh frozen plasma should be given. Then uses of warfarin, आप लोगों को पहले ही बताया था, जो warfarin होती है वो venous thrombosis में काम करती है, तो we will use it in case of venous thrombosis, thromboembolism, or the thromboembolic complication associated with like atrial fibrillation, heart valve replacement, myocardial infarction. इन सब में ज्यादा चांसेस होते हैं, तो that is why so we use these are the indication of the warfarin. Then warfarin activity potentiated by the following things: antiplatelet drug, they potentiate the action of the warfarin. If any drug, they like broad spectrum antibiotic, they inhibit the gut flora. Then because अगर हम gut flora को inhibit करेंगे तो vitamin K will be produced in less amount, so it all potentiate the action of the warfarin. Yeah, it causes the heart rate replacement causes actually yes, it causes the arterial thrombosis. Actually वो thrombosis भी नहीं है, वहाँ पे ना जो आपका वो बन रहा है, थ्रोम्बस जो बन रहा है, बेसिकली दिस इज द एम्बोला है जो हार्ट में जो बन रहा है एक तरीके से थ्रोम्बस, दैट इज आल्सो rich in fibrin and other thing, and fibrin fibrin rich जो ये जो थ्रोम्बस बना है ये हार्ट में बना है और हार्ट से बनकर ये आर्टरीज में गया है, and so it is not an arterial thrombus as such, and this thrombus is rich in fibrin etc, and that is why we prefer the anticoagulant agent, although we use the antiplatelet agent also, but that's the आंसर ऑफ दिस कि आर्टेरियल थ्रोम्बस है, तो वो आर्टरी में नहीं बन रहा है, मेनली हार्ट में बन रहा है, और वो थ्रोम्बस फिब्रिन रिच होता है, एंड दैट्स व्हाई वी आर मेकिंग यूज द वारफेरिन. देन एंजाइम इनहिबिटर्स, तो दिस जो वारफेरिन है, दिस इज मेटाबोलाइज्ड बाय द एंजाइम 2CYP2C9. So since this is a cytochrome enzyme which can be induced or inhibited by many drugs, so enzyme inhibitors drug potentiate the action of the warfarin. Then if any drug like phenytoin probenecid given along with the warfarin, then they compete for the protein binding site, and as a result which warfarin concentration would increase and it potentiate the warfarin activity. Then what are the things which decreases the warfarin activity? Enzyme inducers, any drug which inhibit the absorption of the warfarin through the GIT, and drug which increases the synthesis of the clotting factor like OCP. One of the component is estrogen, and this estrogen promotes the synthesis of the clotting factor. So that's all about the vitamin K antagonist, that is warfarin. Now we will reach to the factor 10 inhibitor. इसमें ना before going to this, I would like to focus on this thing, factor 10A. देखो कैसे लिखा है 10 और A, और अगर आप इसकी सारी ड्रग देखोगे ना तो इसमें भी लिखा होगा 10A, मतलब X से लिखा है. You can remember like this, XA. So all drugs in its name consist of XA1. So rivaroxaban, apixaban, edoxaban, betraxaban are the example of new oral anticoagulant agent. They inhibit the factor 10A, final common pathway of clotting. Rapid therapeutic effect, short t-half than warfarin. The benefit is that they do not require monitoring, fewer drug and dietary interaction in comparison to the warfarin, and they are used for the prophylaxis of venous thromboembolism following hip or knee surgery, and basically these are good. They have equal efficacy as warfarin, and but they have less risk of bleeding. Then secondly, antidote is also available, and the name of antidote for rivaroxaban associated bleeding is andexanet alpha, and siraparatang. These are comparatively newer drugs. Then we are with direct thrombin inhibitor and indirect thrombin inhibitor. First of all, we will cover the indirect thrombin inhibitor and then we will reach to the direct thrombin inhibitor. Before going to the indirect thrombin inhibitor, मैं ये बता देती हूँ, फिर we will take the 5-minute break and then we will continue. So heparin, this is the unfractioned heparin. It consists of pentasaccharide along with the long molecular chain, whereas low molecular weight heparin, they consist of the pentasaccharide along with the molecular chain, which is less long as compared to the unfractioned heparin. And then we have fondaparinix and idraparinix. These are the agents which only contain the pentasaccharide chain. And what is the importance of this molecular chain or pentasaccharide chain? This I will discuss after 5 minutes. So I take a 5-minute break and then again join. Hello, Vivek, are you here?